All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. Today's guest, we're joined by Maddy Roche from Childfree Trust. Before Childfree Trust, Maddy was the first employee and key contributor to the success of XY Planning Network, and she also hosted XYPN's podcast, Behind the Advisor. So excited to have Maddy on the show today. We're going to talk about estate planning, care planning, and legacy planning for people who do not have children, hence the Childfree Trust. So, yeah, Maddy, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jason. I've looked forward to this, talking about the child-free population and how our life will be different is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so let's kick it off. For the listeners who maybe never heard of Childfree Trust, I mean, the name is kind of it explains things to some degree, right? Child-free, but what is it and what problem is it trying to solve? And maybe what does child-free mean in context?
Yeah, great. Let's start there. I think it's important to kind of level set around who this demographic is and who we are as a community of child-free people. So 25% of Americans don't have kids. And under that umbrella falls two distinct groups. We've got the group of those of us who have chosen this as part of our lifestyle. And then there's about 5% of that 25% that have found themselves child-free by circumstance. And that may be infertility issues, that may be not finding a partner, for some other unforeseen circumstances. And I like to start my conversations kind of with that explanation because I want to acknowledge that those of us who are finding ourselves without traditional next of kin don't always have that same experience of this is what we wanted. And so audience members, as you're listening to this, you may know someone or you yourself may be child-free by circumstance. And that warrants a different kind of approach and conversation around just what designing your life looks like when it's designing it not the way you thought it would be. So the child-free demographic is rapidly growing. It has become somewhat of a mainstream conversation around just the population shifts that we're witnessing here in the US. Pew Research recently came out with a fascinating study that shows that for folks that are under 49 years old, 47% of us have said that we aren't planning on having children. So you can just see how fast things may change if the population continues to choose to not have children. Now, we don't take a political stance. We don't believe that this is a political choice by nature, although some people do consider not having kids to be political. What we like to make sure of is that the conversation around how our life will be different is raised and that it's in the mainstream conversation. And most importantly, that the support networks that we may need as we grow older are available. And that's what Childfree Trust is all about.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing. There are lots of these sort of trustee services and these other similar companies, but none of them from anything I've come across really kind of focus in on that demographic, which can be really important because there's like an understanding of where these individuals are coming from, what their needs are. It's not just your run-of-the-mill, we service everybody type of service there. So this is the Hawaii Retirement Show. Most of the listeners are here in Hawaii. I would assume. I'm sure we have listeners from across the country as well. But the services that we'll get into for Childfree Trust, that's available in all states, right? It's a nationwide program.
It is,
right?
yeah. So we can absolutely serve folks in Hawaii. Childfree Trust was really set up to answer the question of who can act on my behalf when I can't. And that sounds kind of cliche, but it's a real question that comes up all the time in the child-free space. This question of who can be my agent, who can make decisions for me. It's been, quite frankly, a very hard question to answer and one of the more emotional ones to answer for those of us who don't have, it's not that we don't have family, we just don't have children. And so what happens when we don't necessarily have that assumed next of kin or friends and family around that we want to burden? filling out our estate documents gets really difficult because the roles of medical and financial POA, executor and trustee are roles that are they're fiduciary in nature, and not everyone knows what that means. But they're also just not something that you just assign willy-nilly to your neighbor. You really want an entity or a person to understand and know what your wishes are to be able to identify them in those roles. And so Childfree Trust is set up to help child-free people do their estate planning effectively and have a backup for who can be in those roles if and when they need them.
Sure. And I come across just conversations, with clients in my advisory practice or just here and there, and I find that you know, those who are child free tend to delay even going into this process of developing their estate planning documents. I think, I don't have children myself, but if you have children, maybe there's a little more of a you want to take care of them. So there's that
For
instigator where
sure.
you're going to get it done. Whereas,
For
do you
sure.
find the child-free community kind of it's easy to push it off? It's not that we don't care about our charities or our nieces and nephews or whoever's going to inherit it, but it's just not a priority, right?
Totally. We see that in our research. We've done a huge amount of research on the child-free community, and child-free people have complete their estate planning documents at an even lower rate than the average American, which is already very low. So it's an alarming crisis for those of us without the kids, because I think we're up against kind of this industry where we say the words estate plan and we say the word trust and we say the word will, and people are just like, ugh, that is not anything I want to touch, or I don't care what happens to me after I die, or I don't need to plan because I don't have kids. Part of my role is to kind of myth bust around that, and that estate planning is not just when you pass away. This is all about contingency planning and succession planning and making sure things are buttoned up so that if there was an emergency, you can be taken care of. But you're totally right, Jason, that one of the biggest reasons people do estate planning is because they're having a child. The second biggest reason people do estate planning is because they're witnessing it go wrong or go right with a family member.
Right.
So, as a child-free woman, we're often, and the oldest child-free child tends to be the caretaker of the parents because, well, we don't have kids, so we should be, taking care of our parents, and we end up in these roles for our parents. And so it's usually around kind of that aging parent time where we start getting prompted, like, oh man, we really should have our ducks in a row and get these documents in place. And that you're right, children are a natural reason to begin this process, but I'm here to encourage people that as a child-free person, there's even more of a responsibility and interest for you to have these documents in place and legal protections in place, because your wishes matter. And identifying who can be in that background, kind of quarterbacking your wishes, is really important and has been hard to solve for, and we've solved it.
Yeah. And then, so we'll kind of get into. I love what you said there. This goes beyond just. It's more than just who am I leaving my money to, my stuff to, right?
Yeah.
It's much more than that. But let's stay on that before we get into it. For someone who is child free, who might not have obvious heirs, what kind of things have you seen or insights? Like what should they be thinking? And I'm sure it's maybe charities, maybe I'm sure maybe pets, maybe you know,
Yeah,
I don't know what nieces and nephews, just try for those
for sure.
individuals who don't have the obvious my children, right?
For sure. And even the question of who do I give my money to or my estate to is a question for a lot of folks.
Mhm.
There's a couple different things that change when you're child free. And it starts with while you're alive. Unless you are really convinced that you want to give your money away once you die, there's a lot of argument for why you should be giving away your money while you're alive, and how you can become more aggressive in charitable giving while you're alive for the tax benefits, so you have more money to give away. How you could help your nieces and nephews when they're young versus in their mid 40s and 50s, maybe when they don't need it as much. That an injection of cash in your early 20s could be quite helpful for
Mhm.
a young entrepreneur niece or nephew. But there's also a philosophy that we employ kind of in the child-free world that is based on the Bill Perkins book called Die with Zero, which is this idea that we should be spending our money on experiences and living a really full and beautiful life and designing our own life while we're living it, and not just accumulating. to end up with a very large, heavy asset bag at the end of life.
Mhm.
Now, no, I don't actually want people to die with zero. We want some guardrails in place and to be taken well care of as we age. But as a child-free person, we can take sabbaticals. We don't have to earn as much. We can take a job because we like it, not because of the money. And there's a number of different ways to kind of look at life. So back to your original question, child-free people are some of the highest donors. And as I work with foundations and talk to other organizations, they have a real interest in serving and protecting their child-free donors because they know child-free people are very likely to leave money to their organizations.
Yeah, and I love talking about this because whether it's child free or not, or in any situation, oftentimes people think of leaving assets when they pass away, and there's just a lot of really good reasons. Like you said, we got the guardrails in place. We're not giving away everything, but lot of good selfish reasons for giving it away while you're living. You can see, the charities or the people you're giving to enjoy it. I think it's such a great thing. I think most of us default in our heads to thinking, well, when I leave it, it'll go there, and they don't really consider, well, I could give it now. There's nothing stopping me from, doing it now.
Money is so powerful and you've worked really hard for it, and you should enjoy the fruits of your labor both by using it on yourself but by giving it away. I mean, the idea of giving away money it goes way back to other, to religious purposes around how much it can do for the soul to see what you can do for others with what you have. And I just encourage people to think differently, just like you've encouraged them to do just now around how giving changes things. And one other point around pets. Yes, 70% of child-free people have pets, and taking dang good care of their pets is a primary focus, both of Childfree Trust, but of the child-free population. And so part of what we do at Childfree Trust is we have child-free specific estate documents. When you walk into the office of a standard estate attorney, they're going to give you boilerplate templates around your estate plan. And a lot of it's going to have this assumed next of kin and this assumed generational wealth transfer that would happen if you have kids or grandkids. We've removed all that language from our estate documents, but we have included something called a pet trust. And a pet trust is actually a trust set up for your pet so that money is put into the trust to be used only on behalf of your pet, which is different than if you were just to go to a regular, document creation group and start creating your documents. And yes, okay, I've identified my friend to take my pet, and here's $15,000 for her to use on my pet. There's no legal guarantee that $15,000 is going to Willie and Fluffy, my two dogs,
Right, right,
and Kitty, my cat.
right. Yeah, and then so the documents, I guess we'll kind of shift into it's beyond just a trust or a will, right? There's the powers of attorney, the advanced healthcare directive, and all of these things Child Free Trust can assist with in drafting, but also in the implementation of and assisting along the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The hardest thing that child-free people have experienced as it relates to estate documentation is who can act on my behalf, meaning medical POA.
Mm,
Who can actually, because a financial planner like you, conflicts of interest, they shouldn't be medical POA for people. Attorneys are typically medical POAs for people. Who is the person that actually will make medical decisions on your behalf if something were to happen? And that's a really big question, because if you don't have someone in those documents signed and notarized, the government is going to make those decisions for you. And that's where we start talking about conservatorship and guardianship. And those are words no one wants to be anywhere near. But it's the reality that if you don't have someone making decisions for you, the physicians and the state will begin acting on your behalf. So the medical documents around what your medical directives are, and who can make decisions for you is super important. And that was really what we have set up to solve for. So at Child Free Trust, when you create those documents, you can name us as primary or backup in any of those roles. But we're not just going to make willy-nilly decisions around your medical wishes. Part of the relationship that you will have with Child Free Trust is that you'll come back into the system and begin filling out care documents, which is this beautiful interview we have that's really comprehensive that we want you to take time filling out, which is How do you define death with dignity? How do you define life with dignity? What are your end of life wishes? What are your prescribing doctors? What kind of treatment do you want? Do you want a DNR? Um, do you want us to contact certain people if there's been an emergency? It goes in depth around the pet care that you have, the kind of lawn care that you need. It's really outlining everything that needs to happen on your behalf if something were to happen. So that in the case of using Childfree Trust, our partner trust company can begin to quarterback all of that. And what that means is that if there's an emergency, and we get a phone call saying, hey, we've got Jason here at the hospital. He has you listed as emergency contact. We'll verify you're a member and we will immediately fax over your medical POA and your medical directives. And then we'll open your care documents and start seeing Jason's got 3 cats at home. He's got, to make sure that the doors are locked and things like that. A lot of traditional trust services will be provided both on the financial side, but on the medical side, start making and employing and deploying the resources that you've ideally outlined in those care documents.
Mhm.
Okay, we've got an aging care manager here. We're going to contact his physician. We're going to make sure X, Y, and Z happens. Being child free does mean we need to be proactive. No one should have their head in the sand. No one should, if we've ever watched anything like The Pit or ER, we know what can happen in a medical emergency, and we want to be protected because we do have wishes around how we are treated at end of life or just during an emergency. So I really encourage child-free people just to do a little upfront work to really make sure that things are seamless if there is anything that happens.
Sure. And being here in Hawaii, we're pretty isolated, and I'm sure maybe there's some listeners thinking, well, I don't know, is this mainland company going to be there for me when I need them? We're all the way here in Hawaii, and then maybe also, I know if somebody does work with Child Free Trust, you have to have your documents drafted with you folks, right? So
Yep.
so how should they also think of does Child Free Trust really know, Hawaii state requirements or regulations? Any thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. It took about 3.5 years to spool up Child Free Trust. We had a whole legal team work on every single state's requirements for those documents. So we have state specific documents.
Mm.
We also have a legal team that is tasked with keeping those documents updated on a regular basis. So we are keeping up to speed with that. These documents are intended to really outline, the core pieces of an estate plan. But again, going back to how will we have a relationship with you? It comes down to those care documents. And we cost $1,000 a year to do your estate documents, to be listed in these documents, and then to have your care documents available. You will not have a one-to-one relationship with a trust company because in a potential realistic environment, you may not have an accident that warrants POA for 25 years.
Mm.
So it would not be worth it for you to develop a relationship with a trust administrator today. But the way a trust company is set up inherently is to be a fiduciary to clients. It is to act on their behalf on a financial and, in our case, a medical basis. They are audited by the state banking regulators. They have insurance. They have net capital requirements. There's a number of different qualifications that trust companies have to have in place to even be registered as a trust company. The regulatory process alone took 18 months to get the trust company spooled up. They have regular audits by the state regulators, and they are looking to ensure that they are acting as a fiduciary on the behalf of members. And what a fiduciary means is that they're acting in the best interest of their clients. So if they start pulling your file, Jason, and they see that you had really clear medical directives and Jason did not get those medical directives, we can assume that there is regulatory oversight to that and there will be issues.
Mm.
We are a fiduciary at the trust company level. We take that honor very seriously. And part of the reason that we spooled this up is because the alternative, unfortunately, is that if you don't have someone acting on your behalf, then none of your wishes will be followed.
Mhm.
So yes, there could be some discomfort in our listeners of like, ooh, this third party in Alabama is going to make some decisions for me. But if you're struggling to get your documents done because you don't have anyone, we hope to be a better alternative than you not having it. And so the opportunity is really to outline those wishes in the care documents around what you want to happen and who your team is, so that we can begin to be kind of project manager on it and begin getting that team around you. So if you want to stay in Hawaii and you have a down payment at a senior living community, you write that in your care documents. If you say you have cognitive decline and you want boots on the ground every day, and this is your aging care manager, make those relationships now and write them in your care documents, and we will ensure that your estate pays for that kind of care.
Yeah, and it just made me think of I always think it's funny when I come across somebody who might say like I want to be trustee, right, of this trust because there's a feeling of, well, I want to be in the know and I want control. What they don't understand is being a trustee can be a just so complicated. It can be a nightmare in some instances. Like you need to do, and like you said, you're obligated to act as a fiduciary. Hopefully the family and everything goes good, but there's liability. I mean, there's things that could go completely awry. You need to take care of, the taxes and just everything else. It is a big ask in certain situations, and I think sometimes people don't quite understand that. But on that vein, what about if somebody wanted to have Childfree Trust or any trust services as like a joint kind of partner? They want to name somebody here locally, but they also want to have Childfree Trust kind of
Right.
work together.
Yeah, excellent. And we expect that we'll be backup for a lot of people. Child-free people have a wide social network, many of us. Now, there are some solo agers out there who are very isolated and need us to be first in line for all of those positions. We will happily fill all of those positions. But for those of us who maybe have a partner or a sister or something like that, that you want to be your medical POA and your financial POA, by all means, list them, executor and trustee, if they're ready for those roles, absolutely. The only thing we can't do is have another trust company be listed as trustee and executor. That complicates our ability to execute on the medical and financial POA side. But an individual, if you've got 10 people ahead of us, that's totally fine. To your point, these roles are big roles, and you hit the nail on the head, Jason. That these are not roles you just accept willy-nilly. And again, like I said at the start of this podcast, it's not that child-free people don't have individuals in their life that they trust. It's that we don't want to burden them with this. And, as you think about imagining if there's been cognitive decline that lasts several months, and, is your partner really wanting to have to worry about filing your taxes while they're grieving this? I've talked to death doulas and other people in the older adult space, and they often say more family, worse care. And when you start thinking about that, you start realizing, like, wow, when we start having emotions get involved with decision making, it delays decision making, and it often goes against the wishes of the person, because it is very hard to make end of life decisions on behalf of someone else. And so if you know that you're very committed, that you want to be treated one way, and you have that outlined, the trust company is an unbiased third party that has a relationship as a fiduciary to you.
Hmm. Yeah, and so if somebody they were really into this, they want to reach out for the services, Childfree Trust will, one, assist them in drafting the documents. Will they also kind of take it from start to finish, help them retitling if they need that, and anything else that comes along the way?
Yeah, great question. You can go on childfreetrust.com right now, create an account, and you can start seeing the application as it's built for child-free people. We have customer support, happy to answer questions. We do not provide legal advice and cannot provide legal advice to you. So what we expect and hope is that people have relationships with people like you, Jason, great fiduciary financial planners out there helping them talk through some of these decisions. But we have video clips inside the system answering questions around, some of the frequently asked questions. What's a beneficiary? How do I think about this? We expect that if you kind of know where you want your money to go, you can get your estate planning documents done probably under an hour. We've made it a very simple process. Once that's done, you've identified us as primary or backup. You choose the membership level you want. It could be 1 year or 3 years, and then those care documents open up. And I've forgotten the last part of your question. What was that, Jason? I'm sorry.
Oh, I think I forgot as well. What was I was
Not the important.
yeah. No, no, yeah. Sorry, retitling, I think it was
Oh,
like
retitling.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we found right away that people have trusts and they don't want to repaper all this stuff. And I get
Right.
that. So we're in the process of rolling out, maybe by the time this airs, it will be live, but we have a restatement of trust. So you do not have to repaper and retitle everything.
Mm,
We've made it easy for folks who already have that in place and have, it's a big administrative burden to retitle something. So we've worked around that. So if anyone has any questions, they can always email questions@childfreetrust.com. Once you have created an account, we have office hours for you to ask kind of administrative operational questions like this. So we've got more than enough support for you once you're kind of in the system.
gotcha. And I know you mentioned it briefly there. So what can you give us a general idea? I'm sure it varies kind of a lot depending on complexity and what's going on, but like the pricing, the membership, the cost of things.
Yeah. So Childfree Trust, our membership is $1,000 a year, $999 a year. We make two commitments, and that is that our pricing will never raise more than Social Security cost of living. So if you can afford us now, we anticipate you can afford us in 15 years. We also promise that if you end up on Medicaid, that we won't stop representing you, but we will stop billing you. And that's for those of us who may end up on Medicaid because we're outliving kind of our expected timeline. We're dying with zero. We've given all of our good money away to charity, things like that. Now, that's just for the membership. That's for the estate documents. You can update them at any time for no additional fees. Say you move from Hawaii back to California or whatever, you can just recreate your documents and there's no additional fees associated. That includes being able to list us as primary or backup, and that includes all of the care documents and then 24/7 emergency response. So you carry around your membership card, you keep it in your wallet, in your car, on your fridge. Anyone emergency personnel can contact us and we can verify membership right away. That's Child-Free Trust membership. The moment POA is triggered or a triggering event occurs where one of the roles happens or is needed, that's when hourly services on behalf of the trust company starts, and that's billed at $275 an hour. I think it's executor is the only one that has state maximums, and our I think trustee services we have a minimum of 12 hours for trustee services, but $275 an hour, and what that means is that when you think about the stat that like it takes 900 hours to close an estate. A trust company is a scalable team. That's on the back of one person when you've only got one person acting on your behalf. The trust company is scalable and they do this all the time. Traditional trust administration is something that our trust company is very familiar with. So ideally, things like your care documents are comprehensive. So the amount of time searching for a pet sitter isn't being billed to your estate. It just is happening because you have your pet sitter listed in the trust document. So, some people may think, oh, this is expensive. Absolutely. At one point, we thought that this was going to be much more expensive. We really do believe a lot of the 15 million Americans over 55 without kids can't afford this. And again, I go back to that, and I have to walk a fine line of, not talking just about the fear of around not having these documents in place, but the alternative is not having these documents in place and having
Sure.
a big, messy legal battle that goes through, all sorts of court proceedings to help, close your house down if you pass away, and that's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those who maybe feel like, okay, I'm starting at ground zero, I have no documents, I haven't really thought about this. Um, it could seem like a daunting thing to undertake, even though it can be quite straightforward and simple. What advice would you give them? Is it just a matter of let's start thinking about things, let's get organized, let's start any advice for those people starting at baseline zero with no experience, no idea of what they're getting into?
Let me start with I hear you and see you, my friends, because it is not a welcoming industry. We hear these words, like I said, and it's just like, oh, male, pale, and stale. It's just like,
Right.
oh, for rich people, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of this like assumption in these heavy words. And so I encourage you just to think about what are your wishes? Who do you want there to make decisions for you? what things do you really want cared for if something were to happen? In our world, the child-free world, is usually the pet. And if those things start bringing up thoughts for you, it is time to start putting some documents in place. And I encourage you to go to childfreetrust.com, make an account. You don't get charged for making an account, and just see how simple we've made the process. Because what's most important is that you have some legal documents that are protecting your wishes. And then the care documents, take some time and fill them out, because that's where we've prompted you with so many really meaningful questions. And that will feel really therapeutic, because I think I forget what that term is, but knowing we're delaying something that we should be doing weighs heavily on us, and it takes up a lot of mental space. And so, peace of mind is something that we like to believe that we're offering people, and a confidence that they can go live confidently is also something we believe that we're supporting in people. We want to make the process easy. We want to make it accessible. Do a little, the Googling will make your head spin. Find trusted contacts like you, Jason, to ask questions to. Go into our system, understand, how we've set it up, and just think about it from a perspective of, if I wasn't here or I couldn't talk on my own, what would I want to happen? And I think that will prompt enough people to possibly start doing it. And if it still brings up some meh feelings, I get it. Talking about emergencies and death is not easy. But at some point, all of us will go through an experience of witnessing an estate planning issue go wrong. And you will be very, very, very thankful that you have your documents in place.
Sure. Yeah, great points. Our guest today is Maddy Roche from Childfree Trust. Maddy, thanks so much for coming on. It was a
Thank you,
great talking to
Jason.
you. Yeah.
I appreciate it. And thank you for your work. You're a wonderful advisor. I know you're from XY Planning Network and part of that network. And what that means is that Jason also is a fiduciary and acts in best interest of his clients. And the whole industry should be like that. And Jason, I so appreciate the opportunity to talk. And if anyone has any questions, come to childfreetrust.com. We host webinars, and we've got places for you to email in questions, and we'd be happy to help you with the process.
Awesome. Thanks, Maddy.
Thank you.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by Toba Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through Toba Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.